Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Paige.
The Umbrella Academy is a Netflix series based upon the comic book of the same name. The series most notably stars Ellen Page from Juno and Rob Sheehan from the UK black comedy series Misfits, along with Tom Hopper, Emmy Raver Lampman, Colm Feore, Mary J. Blige and more. The story begins in 1988 where 43 women from all over the world mysteriously give birth at the same time. What was so mysterious about this is that none of the women were pregnant until seconds before they went into labour. Eccentric billionaire Reginald Hargreaves travels the world with the intent of adopting all 43 children, ending up only adopting 7, which he numbers after the order he got them, and trains most of the 7 to be superpowered crime fighters known as the Umbrella Academy. The 7 children are number 1, Luther, who has super strength and a disproportionate body mass due to an accident, who's been living on the moon for the last 4 years. Number 2, Diego, a vigilante with skills in knife throwing and telekinesis. Number 3 is Alison, a world-famous actress who can hypnotise people by saying the phrase, "I heard a rumour." Number 4 is Klaus, who can talk to spirits and has turned to drink and drugs to cope with trauma. Number 5 has no other name, can teleport and travel through time and has been missing for 17 years after disappearing as a teenager. Number 6, Ben, can emanate tentacles from his body, but he's been killed in action years before, existing only as a ghost, only visible to Klaus. And number 7, Vanya, who apparently has no powers but is a gifted violinist, and is something of the black sheep of the family, after an upbringing of being ostracised and writing a tele-autobiography about her troubled upbringing. In the present, Hargreaves has died and the children, now adults, return home to pay their respects, only for the funeral to be interrupted by the return of number 5, claiming to have spent decades trapped in the future, his mind that of an old man in the body of his teenage self, and warning of the world's end coming in 8 days. Also on his tail are 2 time-travelling assassins, Hazel and Cha-Cha, and there's a whole lot of other crazy characters, weird happenings and goings-on. And that's just Series 1, that's just Episode 1, really.
Yeah, if you're watching this without any real idea of what's happening, which is what I did, there was a lot to go through. Suddenly there's a talking monkey called Pogo, and trying to work out all things was interesting. But there were also subtle hints that I probably picked up on that apparently other people missed, such as Klaus using the drugs to hide or to numb his powers. I picked that up pretty much right away, whereas apparently other people, it took them until it was pretty much explicitly said.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the show, and like I said, that is just Episode 1. One thing I found was that I did remember a lot of the characters' names right off the bat.
Yes, yep, so did I.
Because normally you've gone and got a huge cast of characters, and you're just like, who's this guy, who's that guy?
Takes you a couple of episodes to...
Yeah, especially with streaming as well.
Yeah.
You just fly through episodes and then you can go like 5 episodes and not know a character's name. You just know him as, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
But with this, everyone sort of burrowed themselves in there. Do you think it's because they were numbered?
I think so, but also maybe because they were so individually different too. It wasn't just an all-white cast. They all kind of looked the same. Yeah. I think there was such a difference that it was like, oh yeah, well that's that person, that's that person.
Yeah, it did take me a few goes to remember Alison's name. I thought she was Vanessa for Episode 1 for some reason.
Yeah, I think actually maybe she was the only one that I was like, oh, what's her name again?
Yeah, it sort of passes by so quickly and no one directly refers to her. That was good that we sort of were able to pick out all the characters and going in entirely blind. Yeah. Not being fans of the comic, which has its fans, and obviously seeing bits and pieces of this online but not knowing much at all. Like going into this, I sort of thought the different numbered characters were all children and they were all clones or something. Yep. I think a good way to also describe this is kind of like a twisted version of the X-Men.
Well, I actually thought it was part of the X-Men when I first heard about it. I didn't realise it was actually a whole separate comic, so I was a little bit initially confused. I actually watched the first scene where the first girl gives birth and then Hargreaves appears and had to stop and look it up online and go, hey, did what happened just think happened? That was a bit weird. So I actually had to go and read online and then go back and rewatch it again and be like, oh, hang on, okay, this is so different.
The reason we're talking about this is Series 2 aired just last month. Series 1 has been out for well over a year now. And I've only just watched it. You've got a few episodes in.
Yeah, so I haven't actually finished Series 1, but I do know what happened, happens. And then I have a vague idea as well of what happened in Series 2, so I don't want any spoilers.
Well, yeah, we'll try to keep spoilers to an absolute minimum and only deal with like the first half of the series. I did find Series 1 to be very predictable. which was kind of strange. Like, I was looking at things going, okay, is this going to lead into something later on? And it did.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, whether it was big or small. And sometimes it does throw you a curveball here and there.
Yeah.
At the end of episode 4, Klaus does come into possession of a time machine, and I didn't exactly see where that was going to go, and that was quite interesting, the direction it did take.
Yeah.
But largely, I did anticipate where it was going to go.
Yeah, and I think as well, with other characters that were throughout the show, such as Leonard,
he's
sort of knew that something was up with him. He wasn't just going to be some throwaway character. Pretty much from the moment you met him, you knew that something was going to happen with him.
Yeah, definitely. He's he's an adult. He's an adult student of Vanya learning the violin, and he shows up and learns it very quickly, which kind of suggests that he knows how to play it already, maybe. And like you said, he knows more than he's letting on. And I was kind of disappointed by that, if I'm honest, because as the series did unfold and reveal some of its secrets, I'm just like, oh, is there anything I didn't guess?
Yeah.
Even if a scene began later on, I'm like, oh, this is going to go this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it did.
Yeah.
Which is much less of a bother when it's only like a minute or two. You have to wait until, you see the payoff of that. But yeah, with Leonard, there is obviously something up again about him.
Yeah.
And I did kind of hope he was just a normal, decent dude. But not exactly. Going into series 2, though, a lot of twists and turns and very unpredictable, I would say.
Okay.
So that was, some really fun twists in that, which actually cemented me liking that show, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. And I will say at the end of the day, I do like the show.
Yes.
It's not up there with one of my favourites, but I'll definitely tune in whenever Series 3 does come out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm the same. I'm enjoying it so far, but it's not something I really sat down to binge, because it is quite a heavy show.
It is, yeah.
And so that's why I've sort of taken my time watching it, because I haven't just sat down and been able to binge watch it. But when I do put it on, it's something that you really have to turn your attention to.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started watching the first episode, I was kind of distracted by my phone or something like that. But then something happened and I went, oh, hang on. And I actually ended up restarting the whole episode.
Yeah.
Fully focused on it, because I wanted to know what was going on. And so it captivates your attention and you kind of get stuck. But they're long episodes as well. They're about an hour each.
Yeah, the first series is quite varied in its runtime. Series 2 is a lot more uniform.
Yeah.
I think the shortest episode, though, is only like 40 minutes long, but usually they're about 45. Series 1 goes for like hour-long episodes sometimes.
Yeah, funny how the extra 15 minutes just adds
it
that
is.
extra drag.
It can do, for sure. And one thing that did bother me early on was the music.
Okay, I really liked it.
Yeah, there's a scene early on where they're all in their rooms and they all dance.
Yes.
Not knowing they're all dancing, but they all dance together to this song.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there is a fight scene with some quirky song playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me a lot of the TV shows Fargo and Legion.
Mm.
Were both done by the same dude. And Fargo, was a Coen Brothers movie with Frances McDormand and William H. Macy and Steve Buscemi. And it was about, a crime that goes wrong in the Midwest.
Yeah.
A guy tries to get his wife kidnapped to get money out of his father-in-law.
Okay.
And it goes wrong and there's a wood chipper involved and all that. And the TV show starred Billy Bob Thornton and Martin Freeman.
Okay.
And it's not a direct sequel. It takes place in 2006, came out in 2014. But it borrows themes, and it's sort of the approach of that they took with Fargo, was that like each series was like its own self-contained story of like a twisted crime that took place in that area of America. Mm-hmm. The guy who did that, there's a lot of sort of surreal scenes and music scenes very similar to The Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
And the same guy went on to do the show Legion, which is actually a part of the X-Men universe.
Yes.
And that really plays with, the character in that he's schizophrenic, but he's also got superpowers. Mm-hmm. And there's an alien parasite living in his head, which is like draining his energy.
Yeah.
So you do have kind of crazy scenes where the characters will all just have a dance scene for no reason. Mm-hmm. Or there'll be music or something really surreal. It turns out the guy who actually did the Umbrella Academy, it's not the same guy, but he was the executive producer and writer on several episodes of Legion and Fargo.
Okay.
So, that long tangent done. Here I was thinking this was just a Fargo or Legion ripoff, and it's actually the dude who had a hand in creating those shows.
Yep, so it's his kind of shtick.
It is, yeah, or he's very heavily inspired by it. He's like, this is something that would work.
I think as well, I mean, the Umbrella Academy was created by Gerard Way, who was firstly a musician. So
yes,
I figured that was another reason that music was featured so heavily. But also I think in today's kind of pop culture with TV shows and movies, if you've got a really good soundtrack, people are more likely to talk about it. Like, for example, when Guardians of the Galaxy came out,
I was about to say that, yeah.
It was the big thing about the soundtrack, and I think maybe that was the first thing that other movies have kind of picked up on, and now you've got, oh, I really like that song in that movie or that TV show, and you're more likely to look it up, and extra revenue for the movie or TV show and money-making sort of things. But, I mean, which is totally okay, but I think that's perhaps where I thought the Umbrella Academy was going.
Yeah, I think that's definitely... it does become better, but there is a scene, I think, in episode 2 or 3 where Five is targeted by the hitman in a department store and Queen's Don't Stop Me Now plays. And I'm familiar with that song, and they chop it up.
They did.
And they cut it up so horrifically, and it's just like, it's too distracting. I know how the song should play, and they played it wrong. That really distracted then, but I think later on when they used different songs that were more suited to the tone they were trying to tell, and they did it a lot better in Series 2 as well. There's Series 2, as a brief overview, takes place in 1963.
Yes, yeah.
And it's based around an important world event, which I won't say exactly what it is. But, you know, if you know your world history and you sort of think that, yeah, okay, what happened then? Oh, okay. There's a scene set to a song by the Backstreet Boys.
Oh, okay.
And it's quite a brutal scene which involves a man getting stabbed in the eye with a vacuum cleaner nozzle.
As you do.
And but with the Backstreet Boys song playing, it really fits with like the comedic tone they're going for.
That's what I was going to say. It almost adds a bit of a comedic value to the scene, perhaps trying to sway your emotions. I'm guessing the person who loses their eye is a bad guy.
Yes.
So you don't necessarily feel bad for him at all. You just kind of laugh. Yeah,
it is kind of light-hearted in a way because, I mean, the villains involved in that, they're serious, but they're not the biggest threat. So it's kind of, you can take it a bit more chill in that scenario.
I found the Don't Stop Me Now in the department store was a bit odd.
Yeah.
But again, I just figured it was there for kind of a comedic.
Yeah, well, the other song that played at the end of episode 1, the Constantinople one, was like, okay, this is just a quirky song for quirky song's sake. I mean, Fargo Series 3 has a scene where the characters are playing bridge, and it's a nonsense song called Prison Call. I don't know the full thing, but Prison Call, and it's meant to sound like English, but it's not. It was made by an Italian singer. It's just gibberish, and it sounds like English if you don't pay attention to it too well.
Okay.
So that was sort of a quirky song for a quirky song's sake, because there was no real reason for that to be there. But yeah, that definitely improved. And talking about, I mean, eyes getting stabbed out, the show is quite tame at first. Like, there is violence, but it's not bloody, it's not explicitly gory.
No.
But then Series 2 really ramps it up, where you've gone and got a severed head kept in the freezer, and a massacre happens, and there's a guy with his guts spilled out, and blood everywhere. So it really does go from, like, 2 to 100.
Yeah.
Within, like, an episode or two, and it's just ridiculously violent and gory.
They upped the makeup budget.
Yeah, they did. So, because, yeah, quite early on, I'm like, okay, this is rated MA, and I mean, there's a character does have their throat slit, and you do get a bit of blood there. Spoilers, they do survive miraculously because, you know, superpowers and all that stuff, but that happens. And then it just goes completely insane. So that's just, you know, if you are thinking about watching this, it is definitely MA for a reason.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even Series 1, there's a lot of dark themes to it. I mean, the drug abuse by Klaus and...
Yeah, you mostly see the after effects of that rather than him actually, you know, doing it himself.
But even so, just the whole fact of his character is so intense in a way as well, and that's really an effect of both his powers and the substance abuse. So I think that's also something too that people might not have initially realised is the reason for the rating. I mean, because of course ratings, people just go, oh, it's down to language or blood and gore and violence, but also when your characters are quite dark, that can really affect the rating too, because, I mean, he's a bit of a nut.
He is, yeah. He's definitely one of the more fun characters, Klaus.
I enjoyed him, but I think most people do.
Yeah, and number 5 as well steals a lot of the limelight because, you know, he's a 50-something-year-old man in the mind of a child, and he's played by this teenage actor who is incredibly charismatic and... sarcastic, and his performance is really good. And, yeah, he is kind of like... he's not quite, you know, I mean, Rick and Morty is based upon Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
But, you know, Rick Sanchez, you know, he sort of goes off and he does all this stuff and time travel and he's spouting off gibberish and all that stuff. And 5 is very similar to that. But, yeah, it's kind of like you then cut to a more human family drama with, like, Vanya or Allison. And some characters do fall by the wayside a bit. I mean, Diego I found especially. But he's like this sort of, you know, the crime fighter who's can throw knives and telekinesis and all that. But he does have his moments as well, especially in season 2. He's got a really fun character arc where he's trying to stop the massive world event from happening, not realising that it could screw up, you know, time and everything, if he does do it.
Well, actually, yeah, to do with the characters too. Diego, you get to know him, and he was one character I remembered his name pretty easily. Yeah. But then you also kind of forget he's there until he's back on screen. It's like, yeah, that's right, he's a part of it. Whereas characters like 5 and Klaus, because they are so charismatic, you remember their presence kind of thing, and when they pop back up, it's like, oh yeah, there he is again, sort of thing. Whereas Diego or Allison comes back on the screen, it's like, oh yeah, them, sort of thing. Not in a bad way, but it's just...
they're not bad.
Their characters aren't as over the top or flamboyant. I mean, I'm only sort of halfway through the first season, and I know what happens, but I guess I haven't really seen a lot about the characters personally. I know there's stuff coming to do with like their relationships and their personal lives, so I'm hoping that will kind of round out the characters a bit better.
Yeah, I think it does.
But at the moment, they're just a bit flatlining compared to Klaus. I mean, we were immediately introduced to Klaus leaving a rehab treatment centre, and he was speaking to characters and other characters and that sort of thing. So he had a personality immediately, and then he immediately went and got drugged up again. Whereas Alison was just on the red carpet, and there wasn't much personality put into her. She was just this very tall, beautiful woman. Whereas, I mean, Luther was kind of in between of the two. He was on the moon, so you're a bit like, why?
And looks so strange as well. I mean, he's...
Yeah, I almost didn't really think about the way that he looked until it was revealed why. Because I just figured, well, I guess it's part of his powers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, when he's introduced, he's on the moon, so you're kind of like... well, that's interesting, but again, he doesn't interact with anyone. He's up there by himself, so of course not. But
they get him down to earth pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, but he doesn't do anything that's kind of like, oh, that's what he's kind of like as a person.
Yeah.
It takes him a little while, like Alison, to kind of make an impression, whereas Klaus and 5, right off the bat, they're ready to go.
And you've also got other supporting characters like Hazel and Cha-Cha who are quite prominent as well. And then you've got the introduction of a character called Handler, actress from Grey's Anatomy. I can't remember her name. But she's quite entertaining as well.
Yep.
And a donut lady too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. And one thing that happens at the end of Series 1 is it sort of reaches a point where it's like, you can't come back from this. Where do you go from here?
Yeah.
And the characters that are involved with that actually have amnesia. I've said characters because to sort of disguise the fact it might be one, it might be several. Because I don't want to go too much into spoilers there. But it was quite good that they did that because it allowed that character then sort of be burden-free for most of Series 2. And for them to be essentially reinvigorated and completely new characters. And then when they do sort of remember what happened to them, they're at a point where they have progressed so much that they're not shaken or burdened by it, and it sort of feels earned. Yeah. For them to be in the place where they are now.
Yeah, but then also does that come down to feeling like the amnesia thing was a bit of a stereotype typical.
It is, yeah.
And also a way just to ensure that they could get a series 2 if it was required.
Maybe. I mean, Amnesia is such a often seen trope.
Yeah.
It's so annoying in some cases.
Amnesia,
but with this,
or I woke up from the dream instead of one.
Yeah, but I think what it did for that character was so beneficial.
Yeah.
It made them much more enjoyable because they were kind of a drag in series 1. Not that they were bad, but they were just, everything around them was so depressing and sad, and
I think that's kind of giving away who it might be.
Oh, well. Yes, Klaus. Klaus is really fun in Series 2. He, as a mild spoiler, I mean, you're in the 60s, and he becomes a cult leader, and he's got long hair and a beard. And this guy recognises him as like a cult leader, and I thought, oh no, is he going to be confused for Charles Manson?
Oh no.
It doesn't happen. But that would have been maybe a bit, or maybe not too dark, because considering what else comes.
Maybe that's season 3.
Yeah, maybe. There's a man with a fishbowl for a head, which is...
Honestly, as I said, I'm only halfway through season 1, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. There's a lot of quirkiness, and if this sounds at all interesting, we haven't read the comic book, like we said. No,
but I think it would be interesting to go back and have a look. And I enjoy that the TV show has done that for me. It's not been like, oh, well, it seems like it couldn't be a comic book or a book, that sort of thing. Whereas I watch the TV show and I'm like, no, this seems like it could be a really great comic.
Yeah. It was originally going to be a film, but, became a TV show. And I definitely think TV shows are the way to go for superheroes and comic books like this. Like, even the X-Men. Mm-hmm. You go and have such a long spanning ongoing story with a comic book, and then you try to compress it down into just a single movie that goes for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And unless you've got something like the MCU, but then you've got the benefit where you have a Captain America movie, you have an Iron Man movie, you have a Thor movie. With this, it's good to have something that's ongoing with the same characters.
I think if they tried to make this into a movie, it would just seem absolutely insane.
It would be similar to like Lemony Snicket, series of unfortunate events.
Yeah.
Just trying to compress 3 books that was into one film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you've read the comic, you've probably seen the show already. If it does sound interesting, I think, go into it with an open mind if you do like stuff that's a bit quirky, a bit strange, sort of...
A bit dark.
Bit dark, yeah. Comic book, but it's not your usual sort.
It's definitely a black comedy in some places too.
Series 2 is so great. There is a throwaway line that Klaus has about cowboy ghosts.
Okay.
Which comes to play in the finale in such a funny way, which isn't made it's not made a big deal of.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated that there was that sort of reincorporation like that.
Yeah.
So that was really fun.
Yeah, and I think it's really clever if a series or a movie can do that, because then, like you appreciated it. It gives the audience some kind of gratification for picking up on things and actually watching the show, rather than it's just that show that you have on in the background while you're scrolling through your phone.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I definitely don't think Umbrella Academy is that kind of show that you can just put on and ignore. You have to give your attention to it.
Umbrella Academy Series 1 and 2 is streaming on Netflix. Thank you for listening to our review and discussion of the Umbrella Academy. Be sure to check those out if those sound interesting to you. I'm Royce.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.